Jesus freak here. Given that there's some conversation about Apple II port of Attack of the Petsky robots, which I mentioned in a previous video, and I said, I had intended to work on it, but in the end was just cheering from the sidelines. One might ask, well, have I actually done any porting of software before? The answer is yes, I have, although I don't think I've actually released it. Back in 1999. Now, this was something a lot easier than porting something like, Attack of the Petsky Robots, which is written in assembler. I was working with a program. Actually, it was Lemonade Stand, which is written almost entirely in BASIC. And I decided that I wanted to have it running on my PC without emulation. Now, at the time I was running MS-DOS 6.2, so I had a basic interpreter called QBasic. Actually, I had a more powerful one called QuickBasic Extended, PDS 7.0. But anything I could have done with that about this, I could have done the same thing with QBasic. And basically, I just translated it by brute force. Anything that wasn't basic, I rewrote from scratch. And I basically wrote like a thin emulation layer to handle the graphics. The result was nice. It worked exactly like the original. It looked exactly like the original. It felt exactly like the original. I don't think I have it anymore, but it's something that I could easily bang out. And it's easier when it's written in a high level language. Easier still when the two languages that it's two dialects of the same language and they're both from Microsoft. Now, had I done the translation of Petsky robots, it wouldn't have been as nice as what came out. Because again, I translate by brute. I actually was planning to port it not to the Apple II necessarily, but to the Apple III. Because to me, the slightly different hardware of the Apple III poses a different challenge. I probably could have done it very close to the PET original. And I showed that, hardware wise, it was possible. It never happened, but it would have been interesting, I think. I wanted to do stuff for the Apple III because there really wasn't any stuff out there because the system bombed. Now, a lot of when I've wanted to, port stuff over, it's been, I have, nostalgic feeling for this or that. See, when I was a kid, I was a gamer. Now, being a gamer in the 80s and early 90s was nothing like being a gamer now. It didn't really start to turn that way until around 2000, maybe a little earlier with net support and Doom and Quake. But it's like I'd play these games on my cousin's Nintendo. Like, I really wish I could play them myself on whatever I had around. That'd be Apple IIe. I didn't know at the time they had similar CPUs. I honestly didn't think they had anything in common at all. I still occasionally say, if I had, compilable source code, I could probably try to see what I could do with this game or that game. I know I'm not a very good programmer. I never was. I'm more of an ideas person. But I'll be like, I look at this system, I look at this system. And I think this system can do this. It's like, why doesn't it? There's a guy named Bob DiCrescenzo. He's written a ton of games for the Atari 7800. I don't think it's come close to half the library yet, but I think, before he's done, it probably will. A lot of these are ported from the arcade. There's a lot of, Namco games, Konami games. And there's a few other people who've, come behind him and done ports of other games. And it's like this old system that came out way too late and got stomped by Nintendo. It could have been almost as good. It could have had games that were just as good. But it never got a chance. I look at some of the games on the ZX Spectrum. And I'm like, why was this never done on the Apple II? Of course, those games were done in the UK. They come out on the Commodore. which is in some respects pretty close to the Apple II. That's how Petsky Robots got ported as quickly as it did. I'd say the Apple II was somewhere between the Commodore and the ZX Spectrum. And I think there's a lot of games on the Spectrum that could have been done on the Apple II. It would have been nice to see something like Night Lore, which is an early isometric game. In fact, one of my favorite games growing up as a kid was Solstice, is very similar to Night. Attic Attack got a Commodore port. Cybernoid. Someone actually got the music for the 128K version of Cybernoid. Actually, it was, I think it's the guy who was in charge of Apple Win for a long time. I think he still might be. He did it to test the Mockingboard support in Apple Win. He just translated over the music. I'm like, it would be really nice to see the game itself. And then it runs on the 64. I think it could be done. But it's like, coding from scratch or trying to reverse engineer something is something I'm not really good at. I used to play, RPGs on the Nintendo. Play, Dragon Warrior. Probably better known, Dragon Quest is the original name. And what you probably hear it more named now. I saw a video of it the other day. Someone had actually gotten part of the game running on, what was it, a NEC PC 6000? Talking to computers about the same capabilities as the Apple II. Why couldn't it be done? If I had the code, I could probably do it. And that was, of course, the big if. That's always the big if. The reason why the only real port I did was Lemonade was because Lemonade was written in BASIC, so you had the code as of necessity. I've actually thought about trying to reverse engineer the various games, try to translate the code over. It'd be really nice. There's been a couple games I played as a kid. I'm like, this game is running on a 64K machine. I think it could be done with only 48. Of course, I can't prove that. I'd like to try it. Get Odell Lake running in 48K. But, when it comes to graphics and sound routines, I fall flat. When it comes to the back end, sure. I'm good at that. Eh, a lot of if onlys. And I think sometimes, doesn't really matter. It's just, you know, if I could, it would be nice. Jesus, freak out.